Hey everyone, it's Kelly from Suleiman Quilting Co. I hope you're doing well today. We've had a lot of questions and emails lately about the difference between the 1/4 inch rulers we offer and the 1/8 inch rulers. And I know that some people have watched my other video on this, but I thought I would do a little updated video on this, kind of explaining why you can use one over the other. And this mainly applies to your domestic machine, because if you're on a long arm, be it a sit down or a long arm on a frame, you want to make sure you're using the 1/4 inch rulers. So you want to click the little drop down menu on our box that says 1/4 inch rulers, and those are the ones you want to get. But I'm going to show you a couple tricks on how to know whether or not you want the 1/8, and more importantly, why you want to make sure you get the right thickness. And sometimes people are buying machines and they start with rulers and they purchase the 1/4 inch, and then they buy a machine that they can't use the 1/4 inch anymore, or vice versa. They bought the 1/8 and they can't use the 1/8 anymore. They think they can't use the 1/8 anymore on their machine. So I'm going to show you some workarounds with that. So stay tuned for that, and I hope that you can learn a thing or two. If you're unsure of anything as far as thickness of rulers, please put a comment down below and I'd be happy to answer it. Enjoy the video. Okay, so you can see we've got a whole bunch of different rulers here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the difference of 1/4 inch and 1/8, and when it matters and when it doesn't matter. As I stated previously, if you're on a long arm, you want to make sure you're always using the 1/4 inch foot. And the same applies if you have a foot on your machine that is a hopping foot. So if the foot goes up and down, you want to make sure that you're using the right thickness of rulers. There's some cheats if you're not. You don't have a hopping foot, you have a regular foot, then there's some cheats with that, and I'm going to talk about those as we go along here. So the first thing we want to remember when we're doing this is we want to make sure we've got our ruler foot. So your ruler foot is going to look like this. It's going to be higher on the side. It should be 1/4 inch, and then it should be 1/2 inch in diameter. So that means from this side to this side, we are 1/2 inch. And that 1/2 inch is going to make a difference because it's going to determine where our needle ends up. And our needle, because of that being 1/2 inch, the needle will end up in the center of that circle. And that center means that that is going to be, our needle is going to be 1/4 inch away from the edge of our ruler. But let's talk about first about the rulers themselves and the thicknesses. So this is our Edgy 6 basic straight edge ruler. Everyone should have one if you're going to ruler quilt. But I'm going to bring those up and I'm going to show you the difference there. So you can see the difference. This one is 1/4 inch. This is 1/8. And if we're unsure which is 1/4 or whether we've got 1/4 or 1/8, we have a couple ways to tell. The first way is to take, if you're in North America, or Canada or the US, I should clarify. If you're in Canada or the US, you can take 2 or 4 quarters. I can put 2 of those quarters beside this ruler, and that's about the same distance or the same height. So the 2 quarters is the same as the 1/8 ruler, and the 4 quarters is the same as the 1/4 inch ruler. If you're somewhere where you don't have quarters like we do here, you can use Dude if you've got them, our little spacing gauge. And if you look at the 2 arms, there's 1/8 and 1/4. So if I take my 1/4 ruler, I can see by that 1/4 inch arm that yes, that is a 1/4 inch ruler. I can go to this one and see, yes, that's a 1/8 inch ruler. So that's going to also give me an idea. So now we know what thickness of rulers we have. And say, for example, you don't have quarters and you don't have Dude. You can measure something that is a 1/4 inch and make it up just with paper or cardboard, or cut something out that's a 1/4 inch to do this next trick. So we're going to see what rulers are best for our machine. Sometimes the terminology high shank and low shank can get a little bit confusing. So I like to do this test because it's 99% of the time it's accurate. So when we've got our ruler on our machine, or a ruler foot on our machine, so it's going to look like that. And some ruler feet you're going to have a screw on the side, and that's why it's really important to put it on your machine, because you may have lots of clearance back here, but you may not have the clearance on the side if your ruler foot has a screw that goes in the side. So there's lots of other videos about how to adjust your ruler foot. Right now we're just trying to make sure that we get the right ruler so that we don't have a problem with that. Okay, so I'm set up here at the machine, and I want to show you what we were just talking about regarding the quarters and how to test your machine. So the first thing you want to do is you want to set up your machine like you're going to stitch. Now I just have a piece of fabric here. You would typically try this with a quilt sandwich. You're going to adjust your ruler foot to the correct height so that you can just fit a business card underneath there. Now you know that your machine is all set up and ready to stitch, and this is how you're going to ruler quilt. And this is going to be the best way for you to tell what thickness of rulers you need. So I'm going to start by taking my 4 quarters. I'm going to use whatever I've created that makes that 1/4 inch, and I'm going to start with those behind my ruler foot. So you can see the ruler foot is a 1/4 inch. The edge of the ruler foot is a 1/4 inch in height, and those 4 quarters butt up to it quite nicely, so I know that that's my height. Now, I'm stitching today on the Bernina B735, a domestic machine, and if you notice in behind here, you can see that there's a lot of space. So I've got lots of space around that foot. So if I take my quilt sandwich that I've got, and I put my quarters in that position and I spin all the way around that foot, none of my quarters fell off. So that means that I can use quite comfortably the 1/4 inch rulers. So if I lift my ruler foot, I can move those quarters out of the way, and I can put my ruler foot back down in sewing position inside that cheesy, the 3/4 inch hole of cheesy, and I'm going to move those quarters. And if I were to stitch this, I can now hold my ruler in the starting position, and of course you'd have your sticky tape on and thread and all that stuff if you were doing this for real. But I can go all the way around, and nowhere does my ruler hang up or catch at the back here. So that's the easiest way to tell what thickness you need. And again, this is why we need this, to make sure we've got the right thickness when we're using a ruler like cheesy, so that we can move that ruler as one unit all the way around that circle. And that also will apply when we're using a ruler such as picket fence, where we're creating that overall design, but we're following that channel, and we want to make sure that we're staying within that channel by using the correct thickness of rulers. Okay, now that we've determined what thickness of rulers we want, I want to go over a couple reasons why the thickness matters on your foot. So when you look at a straight edge ruler, you have the option of, even if you don't have clearance in behind for the 1/4 inch, say for example you've tested your rulers and you need the 1/8 inch, you can still use that ruler foot in front of your ruler, to the side, as long as you have clearance to be able to move that ruler around. You can use the thicker ruler if you have them already. Where we run into issues with having the incorrect thickness of ruler, so say for example we've determined that we need a 1/8 ruler, and we actually have in our possession a 1/4 inch ruler, this back is going to have to rub along our ruler, which we don't want. That's going to mean that our ruler foot is too high from our fabric, and we're going to then end up with skip stitches and problems, and we can actually have some issues with the ruler itself, because it creates our ruler foot being higher and can easily slide over and create that needle coming down on top of our ruler, which of course we don't want. So if we're using the 1/4 inch rulers, we want to make sure that we have clearance all the way around that opening, because the idea of course with rulers is that we want to be able to move that ruler all the way around and create the design in one swoop. We don't have the option of, when we're working with our straight edge ruler of only working around part of the ruler foot. So anytime we've got a ruler, like our drop ruler here, so we want to make our flower petals, I want to make sure I've got the correct thickness. The other time this is going to really be important is when you're doing an overall design or like an edge-to-edge design with our rulers, like picket fence or skyline. That ruler foot is actually going to sit in that channel and go all the way around. If we're trying to use rulers that are too thick, it will bind and we will not end up with a nice design. So we need to really make sure that we can slide that ruler all the way through that channel. So again, for a long arm, we want to make sure that we've got the 1/4 inch. Bernina's, you're going to want a 1/4 inch. Every machine is different. You want to make sure that you've got the right thickness, especially if you're going to be using inside designs like this one, or our drop ruler, or our Hexie Duet ruler, or Cheesy. When we're using a ruler such as an outside ruler like Beanie 6.2, if you've got the 1/4 inch rulers, so say for example you had a machine that you use the 1/4 inch rulers and then you sold it and now purchased a machine that you can only use the 1/8, you can still use the 1/4 inch rulers. You just won't be able to use them around the back or the side, wherever there's an impediment, so you can't go around. So you couldn't necessarily do this with your ruler, but you may be able to do this with your ruler. So don't be too quick to say, well, I can't use those rulers. It does limit how you can use them, but you can still use them. Now this is all saying if you have the 1/4 inch rulers, okay? If you happen to have the 1/8 rulers, and then you've bought a machine, so you can see this is the thinner ruler. So you've bought a machine that that is technically a high shank, or you can use the 1/4 inch rulers. This does not apply to a long arm or anything with a hopping foot. This is strictly if you've got a machine that you can use the thin rulers on, but you don't have the clearance in behind the ruler foot for that thickness. So what we want to do then is you can still, so this is my 1/4 inch Bernina 72S foot. It's got the little slit in it, which if you followed me, you know I love. So it's got that little slit. So I can still use the 1/8 rulers as long as I'm not, if this isn't in a hopping position. So I would not use this on my Q20, the thinner rulers. If your foot stays in a position where it's down and does not move up and down, you can still use the 1/8 rulers on your domestic machine. So for example, I've got my ruler here. I can still slide this all the way around and it will stay in the channel. What I need to be super careful of is that my ruler foot is at the correct height. So it should be almost touching my fabric. There should be just enough room between the bottom of the ruler foot and the fabric itself to put a business card under there, or the card that comes with your ruler. That will work too. You want to just have that much clearance. And you want to make sure once you start doing a few stitches that you really make sure you keep that ruler against that ruler foot. What we don't want to happen is the ruler foot to go above the ruler and the ruler slide under and the needle come down and hit the ruler, because lots of bad things happen. So we want to make sure that that ruler stays against our foot. So at that case, you want to really make sure you're holding onto your ruler well to make sure that it stays within the channel. Okay, so we want to move our ruler so that it's staying right against that ruler foot. And then you're going to, of course, put your sticky tape on that comes with all of the rulers so that you make sure it stays nice and secure. The same thing, of course, applies for rulers like our Hexie. So you can use the thin ones if you want. It will allow, you can still go ahead and make that movement around to create your design, but you want to make sure that you're not ending up underneath that ruler foot. So, and Cheesy, of course, same thing. So the long and the short of it here is that if you've got a machine that requires the 1/4 inch rulers, that is not a long arm and does not have a hopping foot, then you are fine if you have some of the 1/8 rulers. If you have a long arm, or if you have a foot that moves up and down as you stitch, you need to make sure you're using the 1/4" rulers. So I hope that makes sense. If you can use the 1/4" rulers, I do recommend you use them. All of our prices are the same for the 1/4" or the 1/8, because I didn't want people saving $1 and then finding a ruler they weren't happy with, or that didn't work for their machine to the best of its ability. So you do want to make sure that you get the correct thickness. The easiest way, back to the beginning of this conversation, to test is to set up your machine, put your ruler foot on your machine, and then do the test that I showed you earlier with the piece of fabric to determine whether or not you want to use the 1/4" or the 1/8 rulers. Hey everyone, so I hope that you enjoyed that video and realize the difference now between the 1/4" rulers and the 1/8. Realizing that if you have the 1/8 and you bought a machine that can use 1/4" rulers, in likelihood you can still use those 1/8 rulers. Just be very, very careful and make sure that your ruler's not going to slide under your ruler foot or over top. And that's another thing I wanted to mention before we sign off here. It's really important to make sure you're using a ruler foot, so you have that nice 1/4" along the edge so that your ruler can run across it. Otherwise, you're going to run the risk of your ruler sliding over top of your foot and ending up between your needle and your foot. And that can cause some problems for your ruler. Your needle would likely break. It makes a heck of a racket, and it could even throw the timing out of your machine. So really make sure you're using the right tools if you're going to be ruler quilting. I hope that you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about the thickness of rulers that you need, go ahead and put it in the comments down below. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe with all your quilty friends. We really appreciate it, and I hope that you have an amazing day.